Hey, well, welcome to the Dream Lab. It's Dr. Contrast Live. Hey, I just really appreciate the fact that you take some time here. Only way to do it. Yeah, that's right, Shadow. Hey, good to have you on board. I hope you're doing well. And before I begin, I just want to really backtrack a little bit here. Last Tuesday, a bit of a difficulty. I had a couple of appointments I had to take care of with my wife. She's doing well, but I just really wanted to start this series on Tuesday, but really get into a situation where that had to be taken care of. But it gave me some time to really think about what this whole series is going to really entail. And I'm going to take a moment here to kind of introduce what we're after here in terms of this approach to creative thinking process. I've always believed fully in the fact that one of the greatest secrets to developing newness, freshness, and ideation cycles and stretching the envelope of where we live and how we see certain things is to get into empathic sketches. It's an extremely sensitive, I think, series of studies to deal with, or process to deal with, for the simple reason that you're not doing something like, oh, it looks like, or you should mimic this, or you're not drawing something from reality. You're really going into a deep series of areas where all of a sudden you're beginning to look at things from a point of view of not being so much a thing, but an emotion. And I think that's the thing that's unique about, to me, the empathic series. And I'll go through some things here. I started some studies here to let you see where we are for this boat concept study. And when I'm at it with boats, I'm not really saying, for example, it's a skip or a tugboat, or it might be could be things like cigarette boats. It could be sport racers. It could be a lot of different things in terms of catamarans, closed body cafe racers, all those elements that deal with speed forms on water that they're looking at here. So we're kind of slowly go through the process today. I call this introduction day. We're going to go through the process of what empathy is, how to work with it, what to look for, what the keys of it are, and some of the keys at any rate. It's so infinite, it's terrifying, and I mean terrifying in a good sense. Not to be fearful of it, but it's an extremely powerful tool. And whenever you're looking at, for example, I use myself as a subject matter here. When I get in a situation where all of a sudden things start to look alike and they're repeating the same shapes and forms over and over again, I always will go right back to empathy and just get the content crank out, just strike lines and get an emotion down and begin to look at those things and move them around. And I'll show you what that process is like today. And this is Introduction Day, Empathy. It's an emotional series about how you feel about what the subject matter you're dealing with is. And before I begin here to explain these sketches, let me also point out that I think the beauty of empathy is no matter what the subject matter is, it could be transportation design, nautical design, interior space, furniture design, architectural design. I've used this tool in every one of these situations from the point of view of professional design service for a series of clients over the years. And it's always been magical. And for me it is, because it opens up the doors of creativity. It's just a floodgate of certain things. So I've got a quite love empathy. I never knew about it before you showed me. Really, yeah, it's a real great design guide, Shadow. You're absolutely right. So to get things started today, since the subject matter is boat design, I'm going after some what I refer to as nautical speed forms. And what I've done in each one of these sketches, let me just show you very quickly here, is begin to develop. It's a twofold process here. Today we're going to look at an exploratory studies and just maybe looking at elevations. What kind of surfaces are we looking for? What's the character, the shape? What's the actual drama of it all about? Where are the cockpits located? What are the bow structure begin to look like? And I'll show you some developments as we go down the line here through the entire process. But notice this blue line will represent, in essence, once the strike was done, what the water line might look like, where that level might be. Also, notice there's a little line underneath there called the center line, the plan view. And what we're looking at here is this study, and all the studies you see up front were done in elevation format. In other words, just a side elevation. But again, that's how it started. Now we could go ahead and begin to utilize that as a final tool. But I think the beauty of this thing is it's what I call the triad of creativity. Number one, it's an elevation, side elevation. Number two, a plan view. And the third is section drama. You can move these things around and pick out sections of these things and begin to look at section, for example. Great tool for product design, especially transportation design. My goodness, it's just amazing. Without any hesitation, some of the C8 Corvette stuff that came out on the road, now you see on the road, came from this very process in terms of getting an empathetic strike down and begin to put flavor together and bring it all together as a productive item for manufacturing. So all that to say, This is plate one. Just put together real quick. If I can get this sneak over just a little bit, let me drop it. That might work out pretty good, right? Let's leave it right there. This is the first set I did here. Again, just a real simple, very melodic set of lines. And I think the thing I want to point out here, just what I really want to really emphasize is notice each one of these sketches. They're not great studies. They're not supposed to be great studies. They're just emotional. Okay, I feel like this. This has a certain character. There's a rhythm to this. There's a tempo to that. So what I've done here is notice there's a lot of sharpness and a lot of, notice, look at the line study here. There's a real thick line here, and then there's a shadow, a ghost line above it. As you go through the whole process, there are variations of that throughout the entire series of sketches, and you'll notice as you see them, you can use the positive side and the negative side of that line, or those lines, to really create new shapes. So again, it's really important to get that tempo change, and I'll show you in a few moments here the example of how that's done and how to translate it, for example, and one of many ways to translate it. And I'm certainly not going to be foolish enough to say this is the only way you can do this, but just to give you some idea of how the process begins. And again, this is description day, this is introduction day, phase one. We're going to take this from this phase into translating into shape and form, and then do some neat, hopefully some neat renderings in terms of maybe some marker studies or pastel studies, maybe a watercolor of what this thing might look like when it's all said and done, or a series of them when it's all said and done. So once again, highlighting the fact that thick and thin lines are really a lot of inside, outside, external, internal line work here. So again, this is interesting here. This one, the second sketch was just a real fast study in terms of, notice, there's that shadow ghost I was talking about right in here again, and it goes into a line study. Now notice that line. If I carry that line through, I would use this sketch, for example, to do what I refer to as a shooting brake boat system. Maybe a rear glass canopy, rear canvas canopy. We'll get into some of those things later, but notice very chiseled front end. We could take that thing and extend it a little bit. You can stretch it. And while I'm at it too, let me make sure I really clarify this point as well. When you do an empathetic strike, you do an empathy study, it does not mean you do that literally. You just transfer the lines literally. You can take that thing, massage the lines. You can increase them, condense them, stretch them. You can go to a modulus of shape. You can change the configuration, but it gives you the essence of an idea, which I think is, to me, the secret of being extremely explosive when it comes to being creative. I've used this system in public speaking engagements and seminars and workshops for corporate America, and they just go nuts. I've never seen this before. And Shadow, you're right. It's a very simple, best kept secret. No one talks about it. It's very rare, and it's because it's so abstract. And I will say this too: I think a lot of people don't touch it. A, because they're not aware of it. B, because they're terrified of it. C, because they don't know what to do with it. And I'm not being critical of individuals. It is just one of those abstract areas where you really have to get rid of yourself, so to speak. Get yourself out of the way and let the emotion move in and take things over. And a lot of people have told me it's very hard because they want to over busify it. They want to really draw with it. This is not a drawing exercise as much as it is just an emotional feeling about what that takes place. The emotion side of it is so powerful. Shadow, no doubt about it. Everything we do, for example, has a certain emotion. It contends it promotes the idea of emotional system. Automobile design, for example, when you see something like a Ferrari or Lamborghini or a Rolls Royce, there's an emotional connection with that machine. It tells you a story, and I think that's what we're after here with empathy here. So there's plate one. Let me go through these real quickly here. Again, notice as I go through each one, I just laid down a hypothetical water line, and then called this view you're looking at here is called a section or an elevation, just a side view elevation of what we're after. I'll refer to this plan view process in a moment here. There's phase one. So that was done there. And there's another little series here. Notice a little more adventuresome, a little slower, sleeker, very quick in terms of putting a line down. And notice overlap here. Notice there's a little return in through here. And again, this very large spoiler or a rear deck system that could be utilized for this whole process as well. Again, notice, look at the line thrust. A lot of weight, thin weight, back to thick again. That's the tempo we're after. That whole process of thick to thin, tempo change, character change, line drama. It's all part of the empathic process. And again, please keep in mind throughout this entire stream today, this is not just a one-trick pony. This gets into areas, for example, of every aspect of design. You can use it for logo development. I've done that for architectural firms. I've used this process to develop logos for architectural firms. Really exciting material because it's so rare. And when people see it, they go, holy mackerel, where'd that come from? Well, a good friend of mine years ago told me a very good answer to that question. Genius, pure genius. I'm not the genius. We're not the genius. The process is genius. It's just so unique. So there's a second phase. Notice you get, again, same look at that little overhang here. Let me move this up just a bit. That little bit of an overhang right there could be a neat little design clue. You have a little brow overhang. Does that go into lighting, for example? Then in this very dart shape, then in this very soft, and then this tail sponson again. A really interesting set of circumstances. So that's phase 2. And once again, fictional waterline and elevation in both sketches. So this phase, there's 2. Now a little bolder now. I'm getting a little bit stronger and a lot more girth into these things now. Getting really interesting stuff. Come back in. I mean, there's such a strike here in terms of, again, the emotion of a long drag line, for example, into the cockpit area, into the rear muscle section or hip section in the boat itself. This could be an interesting, but maybe it's just a reverse sponson where this comes out and flares out, for example, in plan view. Those are the things you're looking for. It's, again, said just a little earlier in the presentation here, this is not dictated as the final study. You can move these sketches around and begin to overlay them a little bit and show you how to go through it and how to modify them as we go. And I'll get into that, hopefully, as the stream begins to unfold as well. So I'll begin to show you some of those pieces and parts that move around here. So that's the third study we did. And then going back in here, the last one we did here was, if I get my hands to work here, we're good. There it is. And then the last study we did was getting into something like this. All of a sudden, I mean, look at the, I hate to say this in this format, but hopefully you'll understand the context. Look at the drama in that upper sketch. I mean, all of a sudden, overhead, a la Le Mans intake scoop. Maybe there's a rear engine machine of some sort, big 16 or 24 cylinder piece, racing boat of some sort. But again, look how severe that is. And it moves into compound shape. So that, again, that counterpoint is extremely critical. Not so much about that could be a sponson of some sort. We could kind of abbreviate that line form back there. But nonetheless, really interesting how that whole drama just begins. You could see inside this thing, and I think that's the part of the emotion that really kind of traps my captive interest. You can see inside it and you become a part of it. You're not just doing a sketch or drawing something. You're actually feeling where the muscles are and where the hard lines and the bones of this thing is, and putting a skeleton together, then putting flesh on it. A whole different approach. And again, cannot stress enough. Greatest friend I've got in terms of in the creative suitcase. This guy, this whole empathic process is absolutely dramatic to me. Hopefully to you as well, once you begin to work with it and see how it operates. So again, now notice the lower sketch. The lower sketch, again, this could be a big, huge yacht system of some sort. I don't know, the plan form of that guy could be really massive. But again, notice, again, very simple, straight line, very, very sheer. And all of a sudden it goes into a very compound form and then echoes it again, then right back to a sheer cutoff. Rear deck in this thing. So again, really interesting. So now from those sketches, I paid that down. I thought, well, here's another possibility. You can take some of these themes, for example, we can develop just a series of little pencil sketches based on basic drama for boat studies. This would be an open vacuole. This is an open area in the boat itself. I'm going to go back and find the resource, which one I worked with here. I think this was, these sketches, yes, they were. These sketches that you'll see here were generated up this sketch right here. Notice, see that little drag line there comes in and drops? What I did is take that same line, dropped it in, and put it together. Now notice the upper got a little stiffer. I just brought it back a little bit and modified it just a bit, like I said earlier. Notice how we've done that. In other words, the empathy sketch was done in that format, or in that format, and I'll show you that in just a moment here. And then all of a sudden we move from that into, now we move some things around to kind of put some surface into these things. Maybe this is carbon fiber to steel or some sort of just really interesting approach to materials changes. And look at the gesture in this thing. It just opens right up, long hood, short deck with the canopy back there, human scale, putting inside that could be really interesting. And again, the third sketch is look at this guy, how it opens up in terms of taking that same concept, which again was this, but picking up a little bit of that same chiseled front and adding some of the things we've gotten from here and here in the sketch to kind of develop the form itself. So this is all part of the next generation of once you go through the strike and energy, for example, and how it all begins to put together and how it begins to assemble itself and become a statement in a composition for empathic design or a process to begin to move into the next section of the process, and that is developing it and getting it a little more clarified with it. So I went through those studies, and I'm going to keep this aside from that's what I work with here. I'm going to come back to that sketch in a moment here. Let me just get those organized again, and we'll show you where we are here. So from those studies, the next step I went through was just a series of little thumbnail sketches like this. Went back in and looked at some really quick little elevations based on some of the things we've done over that last patch of sketches I just showed you into some of these elements, for example. I can give you some examples of what we are here. I think if we could pick one out here, looking at some of the things we developed here. For example, look at how we've taken some of these forms, like this guy here coming off of the character and this guy here. So we're looking at the whole idea of just taking some of these things and go a little further with them. Pardon me again as I get these out of the way. A little further with these things and just doing some real quick ballpoint pen sketches. I went back to notice how this machine again comes back to this page we did here. It's almost like a knockoff or a spin off. And one of the things we're doing here, for example, look at this big sketch here. And then I went back to it, for example, and just modified it just a touch by going from that sketch back into this. Really stretching out the nose cone on this thing and really kind of getting the deck of the platform out there and really moving it into a lot of different areas here. So that's one approach there. Again, went back to the cycle changes from empathy into refinement, just a little bit like in this sketch we're showing you here, and then back into some little thumbnail sketches. So let me get these in the right order here, and we'll go from there. So, and also, I think it'd be just kind of fun. I got just a series of little sketches here ahead of time to take the process into some sort of a stepping stone here. Maybe it's a matter of coming back in and just looking at things like this. I'm going to take a little time here, just kind of knock in to some values from these empathy sketches. These are just, again, elevation studies, just kind of plugging in some surface. Getting some things done here. Let's move these around just a bit. A little bit of this whole concept in. Let's change gears here a little bit. Let's go down the line here. Number 4 gray, just get a little more contact in this thing. And last but not least, a little bit of tempo change here. Let's put a little bit of an insert in this thing. Canopy. Change the graphics just a bit. It's like a modular approach here. Kind of a split hull. Let's open that up, put a little bit of a clamshell, and put a little bit of a sponsor out front here. And come right back in and create a little bit of that racer series in between the two here. You overstate that offset piece. Let's make it really sing here. Let's see if it's going to separate it. Let's separate it. I also think it's really important to note at this stage of the game, we're not looking for believability yet. We're looking for emotion, something to build on, some character to deal with here. So while we're at it here, let's keep this guy in place. Cockpit, all closed body thing here. Let's go back and look at this. Play that in. Now we have that. Let's take a little carbon fiber color saturated or impregnated carbon fiber on this thing. Let's say we did this. That would be cool. A bit of a little sneaky design treat here. Sneak it in behind that sponson. Bring that back out. And that. And come back in with the rest of the drama here. And one more time, let's just some graphics in this thing here. And last but not least, a little bit of surface work in here. What happens as a result of just going back in and just really expressing yourself with just some really interesting shape variations and themes. I mean, nothing really fancy here in terms of what we're after, other than just looking at exploring shape and content. So let me stop right there. Let me put these out side by side here and get your feedback on these. What do you think, gang? Making sense? There's a couple of studies really rapidly put together in terms of just doing thumbnail sketches based on empathy. Hey, Doug Ritt, DGMA, hey, how you doing? 87, good to have you on board. Demetrius here. Have to run a meeting. Okay, hey, nice. Thanks for joining forces here, Demetrius. Looking pretty good. Thank you, sir. Just doing some real empathic studies on boats here. While we're at it here, let me just put this aside for a moment. Let's put a theoretical water line in place here. So it's there. In that case, it's about maybe here. In this case, and again here, and last but not least here. Let's bring that right through. So it sits low in the water, extremely quick in terms of putting together the pieces here. So again, just interesting here, what I've got it here when I'm out here. This is theta, or water line, water line, water line, and again, water line. Just an interesting set of circumstances as you begin to develop this thing. Again, it all started, let me go back just for a moment here. It all started from putting together a series of sketches like that. Empathy. Get the emotion down. Then move into certain things you want to look at. How to begin to treat this thing. What you're dealing with and looking at all these elements that you're working with. To kind of arrive at new shape and surface and the fresh form studies. I mean, this stuff is just absolutely magnificent for doing that. I mean, it just opens it right up in terms of, let me get rid of this for a moment, pardon me. Get out of the way. Any questions so far, gang? I mean, this is making sense. There's a nice series of little concept sketches here. I'm just going to line them up here so I can see them in unison from start to finish. Whoops, drop them down a little bit here. So there we are, just a nice series of rapid, just form shapes and getting some ideas down. Thanks for stopping by. Yeah, it's good. So is this helping to see how this whole thing opens up the creative avenue of approach? It takes all the static out of it because it really put a lot of voice or message into it in terms of emotion. Extremely powerful. There's this first set of sketches from Empathy, just what ifs. They're a little bit more predictable. In a sense, you kind of slow it all down and get some basic shape put in place, but that's the intent. You know, you get the emotional side of it down with the empathy study, then begin to modify and resolve this stuff, and away she goes. So let's take a look at another little approach here. Once you get some things down here, as I said earlier on the stream, this is going to be an introduction day. What empathy is, how to look at it, how to work with it, and what it means. And I begin to develop that into a series of sketches and studies down the line as we move into this whole process in the next few weeks. I'd like to be able to take this into maybe a 3-part series where you do the empathy first and you refine some of the shapes, show how that operates, and get into some really neat renderings, pick a few design studies, and begin to put some renderings together. Doc, with empathy, you have to be conscious of packaging. Is packaging something you start to think of everything? Yeah, you can. You can actually. We've done that as well. That too. You can put the human scale inside that, engine systems and the like. And all the bits and pieces that are necessary for manufacturing, then put an empathy shell around it and begin to modify that as well. That's a good question, Shadow. Thank you for bringing that up. That is definitely part of the process. You can utilize that. You can go both routes. You can go pure empathy first without the package and massage the empathy piece to get the package to work, like we did with the C8 Corvette, for example, or the inverse is true, where you get the package down, for example, engine location, packaging, seating, all the elements that you're dealing with, and then put the empathy around that. Either way, it's a great tool for not getting locked into favorite shapes or becoming similitude in terms of sketch to sketch to sketch. Let me show you something here that's really interesting here. Let's go through. Let me just switch gears here for a moment here. And let's pick one of these guys, and we'll show you what we're going to deal with here. If I were to take one of these beauties, let's say that we worked with, let's say we pick this direction. Let's go back to something a little different than we've already. Let's go to page 2. Let's say we took a look at this sketch up on top. Next step is to take a piece of tissue, run it over the top of this thing and say, okay, how am I going to work with this guy? Maybe it's going to look like this. Maybe I'll take a few modifications to this shape and let me sharpen and stick a little bit here. Maybe it'll come down to something like this, where we actually take this form. Yeah, we're going to drop the bow a little bit. Let's keep that, but we're going to come back in and break it real quickly. We're going to make it really crisp, and then come back into that tear line right there. So that, notice, we picked up the actual bow line, but picked up this little bit of a tear line here. Now, we're going to take this and run it through. Continue the actual bow or the deck right through the shape. I'm going to kick this thing up a little bit, and I'm going to get a little bit of that sponson back there. And I'm going to do this. Put a spoiler back there, then eliminate it. Now, next step is this little line here, beautiful. Let's come back in and just pick that up and do the following with it. And pick up that line. Now, last but not least, let's take this guy and just break it. And again, come in, create a sponson up front, and let that come back into the actual base of the actual machine itself. And let's snub this back, and you get that. Now let's come back in, add canopy. Secondary line, a bit of a break line here. And this line, putting that into the shape, almost apply that follow through right there. So when it's all said and done, there it is. That's what we started with. And there's this translation. Oops, pardon me, let's get this out of place there. I mean, look at the difference in those forms. Now, they might be a little bit more on guard at this stage of the game. But when you start to put together shape and surface in this thing, it could change the entire character what we're after. Let's do this. Let's say if we took this shape and then work on this for a guy, and we'll bring it back in a moment here where the actual sketch is. Let's connect the dots here. Let's bring that in. This becomes a pillar, and all of this becomes glass. Let me take that right through. This becomes a shroud of some sort. And this form does this. Comes in. A little hypothetical water line in place here. And let's do this. Pardon me while you just kind of pick up on something here. Oh yeah. Bring this out here. Let's now take this guy and say, okay, now this is what we're going to do. Here's our 50-inch line right here. As I come forward, look at the suction generation in that thing. All of a sudden, look how much you're taking that whole form from this guy's diving inside that shape. And again, you didn't get there by just all of a sudden guessing at it. That becomes part of the whole process about why this empathy stuff. I mean, look at the difference from one to the other here. So I can cover this up. I gotta help me out here, guys. Is this making sense? We took that shape right there and we developed that from it. And there you go. This is now the elevation of that same form. Look at that. Just interesting how it all begins to unfold. I mean, to me, I hate to say this over and over again, but to me, it's extremely exciting to be able to see this in terms of starting with an empathy sketch, an emotion, and transfer it into form. And we're picking up some of the same design lines, but we're not following it as verbatim. We're actually modifying as we go. You can use this system like you would not believe. I mean, you could eliminate this back here and still have a really interesting shape and form to deal with. And now notice how that little shape trails right through this whole underbody. Goes from a very, and it begins to twist as it goes rearward and back into the form. I'm gonna stop right there. I just need your help here, guys. Is this making sense, or am I just going too far too quickly here? Pardon the pace. I want to cover a lot of ground today in this introductory setup on what empathy really truly is. So I really appreciate your help here, guys. What do you think? Let me put a pen on this thing to kind of hold that down. What do you think, guys? Making sense? I'm going to hold on right here for a second and let you kind of respond. And just do this. Let's get this down here to that. And I think we're pretty good. There you are. So there's an empathy study on top and a translation down below. One of the several things to work with. I mean, we could go on and on and on with this, but just actually using it as a collective design tool is, to me, it's inspiring. Because when I get into this process of doing this stuff, it's like one after the other. You just keep rolling, because it forces you to think in a deeper sense. And I'm not talking about intellectualism here, folks, so don't misunderstand me. I'm talking about the depth of creativity. It really taxes your imagination. Let me stop here. Anybody? Shadow? Comment? Doug, you're still with me? Hopefully. Please feel free, guys. I need your help. Am I communicating this concept and this principle all right? Very difficult thing to do because it's so abstract, such a unique opportunity and the process to deal with anybody. Nope. All right, I'll just move along here. We'll come back to this in just a second. Let's say, let's just do this. Let's keep this aside for a moment here. Let's say let's take the second approach to this and use this second sketch right here. Let me put this back in place. Let's use this guy. Right, let's use this one. Go back to page 1, and we'll pick up this stuff here as we go here. So there's an empathy sketch. Now, we're going to come back to, let's use this guy down below here. Let's turn this into maybe a fastback or a shooting break process here. And we'll show you how this whole concept of thick and thin line begins to develop itself and work with it here. So let me just get this guy sharpened up here. Let's keep this line very sheer here. Let's keep this going. I'm going to set this up. So I'm going to come back and begin to set this guy up by doing the following. I'm going to pick up this real strong bow line here. I'm going to come back inside here, pick up that line. I'm going to take this right back. I'm going to drop this in. Then I'm going to come back in and drop this line in place, keeping it verbatim. But I'm going to come through with a sneaky line here and do the following. And then follow this line right here. Bring it right back up into the kick. And come right back to this. Notice once again, I've taken some of the cues and begin to work with it. But some of the cues I've just eliminated and just gotten rid of it, so to speak. And let's come back, let's get this, let's do this. Let's kick that thing right back in here. So there's phase 1. Let's turn this over a little bit here. Let's do this. I'm going to put that up there, and we'll show you that relationship one to the other. That's that to that. I mean, notice the difference in architecture. Again, it's really stretching a little bit, but I'm just looking for newness in terms of trying to refine what these shapes are doing on top here and how they're translating down below in this pure elevation. So let's go back to this. Let's do this. Let's get this lined up here. I'll put this in place. Put this over the top here, and let's just kind of come back and add a little bit of little graphics here. Windscreen. Again, shooting break has a little bit of a backdrop on it. So either glass or fabric that folds back or retracts of some sort. Into this shape here, this undercut. Into another undercut. Very simple form. Let's get those guys to merge in a little bit. Again, this. Entry egress. And a little bit of there's a form study there. There it is. So there's another little variation on theme here. If I've got this guy underneath there, let's see, where am I at? There it is. Let's put this into place. Nope, wrong one. Sorry about that. It's this guy right here. There we are. This was the empathy piece, and there's the translation. Now it's modified a little bit, but that's okay. That's one of the nice things about what happens when you deal with empathy. You can get a strike down and begin to move it around in such a fashion that all of a sudden it changes the entire character of the form itself, and you can massage it and change as we go, as we said earlier on in the presentation. That's completely permissible to do. There's the actual empathy stitch, and there's the actual potential translation. So once again, I need your help here, gang. Is this helping at all or not? Really do appreciate it. Just a bit of time here to kind of help me out. Pardon me. Now, while I'm waiting there, let's kind of put some section in this thing like we did in the first one. So let's go back and find where the 50-inch line is. About right in through here, highest point. Let's call that 0. And again, coming forward in the cockpit, in the body form. Into body form, into undercut. Again, let's pick a section there, and there, there, and there. Again, notice now that surface has to come through, so it's going to come through here, step out, and then come back. It's going to come out, step out, and just pick up the tail section of that form there. Now this one's going to take that same shape, which is there, and right back into there. Again, the same shape there, right back into there. Notice how that line kind of falls just a little bit. I'll show you where that highlight line is going to go. That line is going to break right about there. So it's going to give you a little bit of time. In essence, this guy, add a section here. All that is just a continuation of that front form right there. So that's what that does. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now let's come rearward. Let's go back here. 2, 3. Again, same canopy. Into that very round form back here. And into that undercut. Again, into that round form here, canopy, round form. Notice we're stretching it just a little bit into that round form, and then really tailing it off right back here. I mean, look how that form changes as a result of seeing it from an empathic perspective, not a typical form. Let me get this section straightened out here, folks. Again, sorry about that. Kind of a really ugly, thick line here. Sorry. There it is. There it is. And really rolls over. Notice what's nice about that. Look how that shape almost is standing up on itself, then it just rolls back into the form itself. So there's some of the section study going involved in that little guy. Let's put a water line in this thing right here. So it's going to really sit deep in the water. So it's going to be there. And right through here. And just above the tail section right there. So there's a theoretical water line right there. So let's look at these two. Get this paper to unfold here for a moment. There it is. So there was sketch 1. And there's sketch 2. I mean, look at the variation in theme there from 2 entirely different forms. Let me just get that all straightened out so I don't get a shadow on the screen. There's that. And then let's use that. I mean, look at the difference there, gang. Whoops, if I can get them in place would be great. There it is right there. And it's going to sneak them in here. There you go. There's 1. And there's 2. All right, let me stop there for just a second. I hope this has been helpful. I mean, look at the variation you get in terms of newness. I mean, they're not great sketches. I'm certainly not here to say that these are marvelous sketches, because they're not. They're emotional sketches. They're what ifs. They're hypotheticals. What do we put the pieces together with? How do we see this and becoming a part of? Notice sketch number 1 off of that piece. Sketch number 2 off of, if I can find it here. Oh, it's underneath me here. Sorry about that. Sketch number 2 came off of that piece. I mean, it's just amazing how, again, we just modified some things. So, yeah, we can do that. We have the license to do so. I took that line right through, opened it up, and then dropped it. And it became part of the process for really doing some neat stuff with this thing. So, again, very dramatic approach. And I just wanted to take some time today to really begin to open up this whole idea of getting into exploratory sketches with empathy and how exciting they become in terms of creating newness and developing ideation studies that begin to really kind of generate interest in terms of a new platform of thinking. And again, I've said it before, I've said it a million times when using this beforehand. It's a very unique approach to not only nautical design, transportation design, architecture, interior space, furniture design. I even use it for logos. I mean, it's that explosive. Laying down a strike and picking it out, certain things in that strike, and begin to develop shapes and forms for it. So let me stop here. Again, Shadow and Doug, if you're still there, please. Any input at all about is this helping or hindering, guys? Very elaborate approach to problem solving here. Let's make sure we're doing the right thing. Anybody? Am I communicating all right? All right, so I'm just going to carry on here. Hopefully, I hope this is making sense. So by the sounds, I think it might be doing so. So I'm going to put this aside, get these guys out of the way. And then last but not least, I just wanted to show you one last translation here, for example. And again, I go back to this one sketch, and I did this work with one here to work with today. And I just happened to select this guy here out of uniqueness. I went back to this top sketch, the first one I did, and went back and said, well, what if we looked at this one more time here and begin to utilize that shape as both an elevation, for example, in the water line, and black is the water line for an elevation, side view elevation, and then underneath it is also the center line for a plan view. So what that means is this: if I'm looking at this form to develop a nautical system of some sort, whether it's a speed form, cigarette boat, catamaran, whatever it might be, I'm going to use that elevation to kind of get me started. But it also has a potential of becoming an extremely romantic plan view by just simply doing this. Look what happens when you rotate this thing out. I'm going to get the whole thing in here. But now that whole line, that blue line, becomes now a plan view for this whole shape. In other words, here's the border line. And I'll show you in a moment how that translates. I can't get the whole thing on the screen, but just think of this thing being turned at 90 degrees, and all of a sudden you're looking right down on this vehicle or this platform as a boat study. So that's where I started there. So let me just show you what happened here. So I took that same approach and did this. Notice, let's cover this up so it doesn't kind of break through. This is really interesting. Now this is where we started. There is now the elevation study, right? So that's what we just started with right there. There's elevation right there. So I took that same approach, and then notice in this sketch, went to that. There's the translation in terms of doing the elevation. Notice the same, very sloped line, brought that drama line in, an intake piece. This might be a midship or rear engine. It could be a Lamborghini speedboat of some sort. I don't know, Ferrari. But nonetheless, it's got that character to it. So I took that empathy, kept it pretty straightforward, and just added some little detail work to it at all. But as I said earlier, what's neat about this whole process is the translation and the elevation. Now look what happens when you rotate. If I can get this in to rotate just enough, if you can see that whole shape in the plan view, looking down on it now, that blue line becomes the center line for the plan view. From that, I generated this. Now let's move it this way. Look at that. Look at that plan view on that thing. Let's just do this upside down here. There's the elevation. Again, look at the plan view. All of a sudden, that's from this shape right here. There it is. There's the elevation here, translated, and here's its plan view. Look at the drama in that form. I mean, you would never imagine that. And again, I have to be careful how I state this. These are not great sketches. That's not my point here. My point is the greatness is the process, how it utilizes uniqueness, and it opens up the avenue of opportunity in design and creativity. It's it's scintillating. It's just that dramatic. But again, notice how the side view is one approach. Then when you turn the plan view, all of a sudden the whole thing. And again, let me just do this. If you could see this plan view, look how I picked up that line. It's this to that to that. Now notice again the same relationship. There it is there, and there it is at the tail section. I just rounded it off a little bit, and that was it. That's how the plan view began to function for me. But again, look at that, how it just changed the entire character, the surprise element. I think that's what's great about getting into these sketches, for example, using empathy as a great design tool. It's a surprise that comes out of it, for example. I'll be very candid with you. I would never get to the place of being this lucid with it had it not been for empathy and learning how to see through certain things and apply the process in such a fashion that it really does an excellent job of developing newness and form to it. This is a closed canopy piece, of course, I realize that. But down the line, as we go through the series, we'll start to open things up, maybe put some cockpit studies in there, change tempo a little bit. But today, I just want to really stress the fact that it's an introduction into empathic sketching for boat concept design. And the boat concept we're looking at could be a variety of things, a whole range: speedboats, cigarette boats, catamarans, land speed record holders. All that material is part of the process here. And we'll kind of designate as we designate maybe the categories we go here. Would also love to get into things like maybe we're going to take this thing from this development series into another series of strikes and looking at shape and modifying them, and then putting it into real-time perspective and see how that operates, and doing some really nice sketches in terms of putting together some nautical systems here. So I hope this has been helpful for you. Anybody, in closing at all, any commentary? If you're with me still, Doug, Shadow, anybody else listening? Great to have your input here, folks, because I do rely strongly on that input side, because I don't want to leave the audience as I sign off here very shortly in some sort of a disarray or a confused state. I want to make sure I'm communicating clearly here. This is a very sensitive operation, extremely powerful stuff. So anybody, any concept work, any commentary, please, really helpful. So while I'm waiting here, for any commentary and conclusion, I'm really going to open this up as a series. I think this is strong enough to take into a variety of different areas. For example, maybe we start with boat design, maybe take a day or a session and show how it translates into architecture, product design, transportation design especially. That's been its primary vehicle. For example, when I learned this whole process was through a guy that was extremely powerful in every command of creativity. That was Sid Mead. This was one of his great techniques in processing for developing newness. And you can see, if you look at his work, you can see where the newness comes from. It's a whole fresh look at certain shapes and organizational systems and vehicle design. And he used it in architecture. He was the one that told us this is a universal thinking process. But again, the beauty of it is it's such a great, well-kept secret. But I need to expose it more to young people in terms of, I've had a lot of young people call me or contact me and say, well, I'm really running into a wall. I'm doing the same thing over and over again. Just really a lot of questions about what ifs, and I always refer to them to empathy and show them how that operates. So we'll start next Tuesday's stream by showing you how the empathy starts, how to get this guy started, what to look for, what not to look for, and how to and what not to do. And then we'll begin to develop this thing as it goes further. So anybody in closing here, Shadow, I appreciate. I know you're stuck in a meeting, but thanks a lot for joining the journey here. Yeah, empathy is a phenomenal journey. We're going to pick it up next Tuesday and carry it out a little further. And again, so much enjoyed having you guys on board today. I hope this has been as exciting for you as it has been for me. This has been a really good refresher in terms of let's get back to basics and really make this thing hum and make a statement with our skill sets. And I believe me, folks, let me close with this. You will absolutely admire the process once you start to see it begin to work for you. The trick is, and I hate to use the term trick, the secret to the process is keeping very simple and not busifying your line structure, which is what I want to cover in phase 2 when we get together next Tuesday. We'll start with a piece of content grant and show you how to develop on newsprint, thus strikes, what to look for, what not to look for, what the line structure does, then take it from there as we go. So once again, so grateful for the time spent here today, guys. Please take a moment to visit my website at drcontrast.com. I've got some neat stuff going on there. in terms of a drawing program that might be of some help to you. Also, we're finally getting all the information put together for some apparel lines that are going to be very exciting. Some Ferrari shirts, Lamborghini stuff, Corvette stuff, some Star Citizen material coming down the line to get into t-shirts. They'll come up on the website very shortly. We'll keep you posted on that. It's not appearing now because we're trying to put some pieces together to make sure it's done properly and getting the right saturation of color on the shirt so they're high quality pieces. But it's come together very nicely. So thank you for all your patience on that matter. And again, please drop me a note at jim@drcontrast.com. If you have anything you want me to talk about or work with you on, I'll be more than happy to really kind of work with you on some things that maybe you have some difficulty with. And by me stating that, that doesn't mean you're having difficulty in terms of being creative. If there's something that you have a different, like organic shapes or form or whatever, let me know. Or perspective, even as simple as perspective is, can be very daunting at times. So let me know what you think in terms of your aspirations. And again, I can be reached at jim@drcontrast.com. So come right into my office and we can go from there and put together a plan for you. So all that to say, thanks so much for the time again, gang. Have a great day and a terrific weekend. And I was close to this because it's the most important part of the stream. Never forget to remember to dare to be great, because you are. Thanks very much, gang. All the best, and we'll see you next Tuesday.